What if the mystery tradition of ancient Rome, the sacred landscapes of the Hellenistic world, and a 15th century Italian tarot deck were all pointing at the same experience? Peter Mark Adams has spent decades answering exactly that question. A philosopher, a poet, and an author, his books include Ritual and Epiphany in the Mysteries of Mithras, The Game of Saturn, Decoding the Sola-Busca Tarocchi, Mystai, Dancing on the Mysteries of Dionysus, and Hagia Sophia, Sanctum of Kronos, Spiritual Descent in an Age of Tyranny. Peter works at the intersection of esotericism, sacred landscape, and the ritual technologies of consciousness. In this conversation, we cover how the cult of Mithras is a direct continuation of the Orphic mysteries, with roots stretching back all the way through the Epic of Gilgamesh to Göbekli Tepe and a pre-Bronze Age oral tradition older than anything that we can call civilization. How a 15th century tarot deck turned out to be an encoded grimoire for invoking a Saturnian current into the Renaissance warrior prince. Why the energy body and ancestral healing are not peripheral practices, but the foundation everything else is built on. Why Saturn, the conspiracy culture, has turned into a symbol of elite dark worship is the exact opposite of what the tradition actually contains. And what the mystery cults were actually designed to produce. A direct encounter with non-dual awareness that changes everything going forward. As Peter puts it, when you raise the inner energy sufficiently, all of these doors start to fly open. And remember, this is MagusintheMedia. And if this is your kind of conversation, hit the subscribe button, like the video, and pass it along to someone who's ready. Now, let's get into it. Welcome back to MagusintheMedia. We have amazing conversation today. I've been wanting to chat with this fine gentleman for such a long time. His name is Peter Mark Adams. He's an author, a poet, an essayist who specializes in the ethnographic and visuality of ritual, sacred landscape, esotericism, consciousness, and healing. He is a philosopher and a brilliant mind for the crazy world we live in today. He has written such books as, which we will definitely get into, Ritual and Epiphany in the Mysteries of Mithras, The Secret Cult of Saturn in Imperial Rome, as well as Mystai, Dancing Out of the Mysteries of Dionysus, as well as many more. Thank you for coming on Magus-in-the-Media, Peter. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Lovely to be invited. Thank you, Brandon. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Let's see how we go.
Let's see how it goes. I agree. I look forward to it as well. That's always a good way to start off with your work in the esoteric and the Western esoteric tradition, as well as philosophy. I like to get my audience and everyone out there to kind of get a better understanding of how you came into this work in the Western esoteric tradition and philosophy itself. Where did you start out?
There's two threads in esotericism. One is the one which you can track through your reading and influences. And then there's the real thread, which is the one that pulls you through certain experiences and towards certain events and certain encounters, let's say.
Right.
So these two threads have always been wound with me from very early age. You know, from like the age of 8 or 9, I would say. I was very conscious of it. Like I erected an altar, you know, when I was like 9 years old.
Oh, wow.
To one of the goddesses. You know, that's getting out of the blocks pretty
fast.
pretty fast. And then throughout my teenage years, I was like reading tarot, Blavatsky, Mathers, early witchcraft material. There wasn't much around. I'm a good old age now, I tell you. So, and then got into paganism, and you know, at the same time, I was living a fairly normal life. So this is always like two threads wound together, never entirely submerged. It always comes out and grabs you again.
It does.
And I guess in my teens, I started to firm it up when I started to study Shotokan karate as a disciplinary regime, you know.
Yeah, I do know.
And I combined that with Tai Chi, which gave like more flexibility.
Definitely.
Shotokan is a very hard style,
Yeah, very structured. Yep.
very hard style. So combining it with Tai Chi was kind of perfect.
Yeah.
And then from there, I evolved into like energy healing, which is like, like if the martial art is like one side of the coin, the other side is the healing,
Yeah.
because you're working
Yep.
with the energy body just in two different ways,
Yeah,
same energy
definitely.
body. And I did a lot of training in professional breath work, rebirthing and meditative breath work. Um, and then I started practicing Reiki as well, which I saw as an extension of my kind of Japanese energy cultivation. But of course, the Reiki I got was a Sui Reiki. It was part of that Tendai Buddhist tradition. So again, I got plugged into a very esoteric realm. And it was really at that point that the esoteric world started to open itself to me in the sense that it became an object of direct perception for the first time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
yeah. I can give examples of all this if it's of interest, but
Definitely interest. Yeah, let us know. My audience is learning that I myself am trained in Chinese martial arts as well as
uh,
mixed martial arts. And
oh,
so I teach a lot of Tai Chi as well as doing a lot of the hard styles. So it's definitely of interest because it is most people don't see it as martial arts being its own level of ceremonial magic and healing. So,
yeah, I mean, this whole cultivation of the energy body and the repair of the uh, subtle sheaths of the astral body is is the fundamental foundation work for any work on an esoteric dimension.
yeah.
Without that repair process, you cannot disengage sufficiently
Hmm.
to re-engage with realities that remain hidden normally.
Yeah.
And let me give you an example. I met this Reiki teacher. She was really energized, high Kundalini energy and everything. I was sitting there thinking, talking to her. I was thinking about getting trained. And I started to get all these like blobs of green or in my visual field. So I was like rubbing my eyes. I was looking out of the window. No, there's nothing there. But they started to congeal, and it must have been her own energy is so high. It opened my perception, and I could
Wow.
see the field, of her energy field. It's like it was like oil paint, a green oil paint flowing across the surface of her skin, and then there was a higher, almost a violet color in it as well.
Wow.
She was very high energy person, but to be in somebody's presence who has that level of inner energy opens the third eye, so to speak.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
and also because we're talking about Reiki here, we're talking about external intelligences, higher order beings.
Okay. Can you
Okay.
explain a little more for that?
Well, yeah, this is the reality. Actually, we live in a world inhabited by countless dimensions, which are inhabited by every. We talk about other dimensional. We can talk about lower vibrational. We can talk about higher vibrational beings. There's absolute plethora of beings in reality, but generally our perception is too narrow and too focused to be aware of them. It's fairly rare to encounter an individual who can just like see, like talk, communicate with the dead, for instance. The dead are a living reality. What was it?
Yeah.
William Faulkner said the past is not even dead. It's not even past. It's
Right.
co-present. It's co-present, and the sheer richness of the co-presence of intersecting dimensions is more than we're capable of computing. I mean, it's mind blowing. Literally, You cannot remain focused in life and be open to all of this.
Right.
So it needs to be episodic, and it needs to be integrated. And that brings me to this issue of higher order beings, and their intersection with our life stream. So we're talking about highly intentional beings. And it's not a question of you wanting to be able to see them. It's a question of whether it makes sense to them that you see them.
Oh.
Because they're
Yeah.
purposive. They don't have time to waste. They're not here for exhibition. Okay.
Right.
They have job to do, and they're totally focused on that. And if your alignment is to such an extent with them that the work and what you do in day-to-day life is totally aligned with their purpose, they will be so close to you in that.
Interesting. That is actually fascinating. Yeah.
And again, if you have that, your energy body is sufficiently repaired from all the traumas and the traumas that we bring into this life from previous lives. You know, that repair process needs to be ongoing. It's like the foundation of everything.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that means experimenting with different healing modalities, because they all have a different purchase for different people.
Right.
You know, so, you know, you need to look at the spectrum of healing potentialities, and that includes what you eat and drink day to day. Yeah. If you're eating junk and drinking junk, you know, you're closing down your energy body faster than you're opening it up. So you need to have a total discipline here.
Yeah, it is a discipline as a whole, and I think people forget that it's everything you do in your life is actually integrating with you or halting your own progression, not just spiritually but physically, materially, and it's like every level.
Yeah. So really, to want to engage with these dimensions, obviously there's like fast fruits like ayahuasca, but that is something that happens to you. It's not like you're engaged in a purposeful pursuit as your full-time work, yeah. Which is your service in this incarnation, right?
Definitely.
But when you have that, when you have all those dominoes lined up, you know, then things can begin to happen. I'll give you another example just out of the top of my head, you know. I was dragged along years ago now, God, it must be 30 years ago, to see this guy, Tom Kenyon. And he's working with these higher dimensional entities or beings. He calls them the Hathors. In fact, they said they were the Hathors. Okay.
Interesting, like the Egyptian Hathors.
Well, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? So what Tom does, he has this like multi-octave voice, and he sings such a pure and beautiful sound. And when he's kind of possessed by this, the number of octaves increases beyond what he can normally sing, you know. And so I went along there, and he's just sitting on a chair in the middle of the stage, you know, in this small auditorium. And he starts singing, you know, and it's so beautiful. And then all of a sudden, these tall columns of light emerged around him. I mean, when I say tall, I mean 30 meters or something, tall columns of light. I could see them like I'm seeing you now, that distinctly. And after a while, they kind of drifted off the apron of the and up through the auditorium, and one like passed through me, you know. I thought, wow, that's not something that happens to you every day. You know, I didn't think much about it, you know. It was so just out of this world. So at the end of this, I don't know what you call it, seance. I don't know what you call Tom's performance. Somebody in the audience said, okay, what do these Hathors look like? He said, oh, when they manifest as a tall column of light. So there you go. You know, why should I have seen them and nobody else did?
Right.
And you know, what I saw exactly corresponded with the way he answered the question after the seance was over.
Yeah.
Because I'd had no interest in it or knowledge of Tom Kenyon before I was dragged along there. I was like, oh, what's this? You know?
Yeah. What's this nonsense I'm going to?
Yeah. So there's obviously an intentionality at work backstage, okay,
Right.
which
Yep.
your persona is not a party to it.
Yes.
Okay, so all you can think of is that you have a certain alignment in life. You've got a certain, perhaps, commitment to providing a certain service in this life. And that's enough for the other dimensional entities to know who you are and what you're about.
Mm.
They don't need instructing. They see it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They see across dimensions and through time. So, and incidentally, that is also a lesson for people who are attempting to contact various entities and beings.
Right.
Because while your conception of what's going on is like corralled by your persona and its beliefs and its self-estimation, their perception is of the persona as a manifestation of a spiritual continuity across time.
Mm.
And they may have different plans or want to utilize that life stream themselves. So
Right.
you're playing multidimensional chess, whether you know it or not.
Yes, very important. I think that's very important for everyone to know. Is happening no matter what. And whether you're into the Western esoteric tradition or magic or healing or anything, you're playing no matter what.
Yeah. And it's as precise a game as chess with
rules
rules and implications. So, you know, and as I say, it's across many lifetimes. I often we spent like 20 years doing energy healing work here, you know, and often have people coming in and they were having the most disturbing circumstances, you know, like one woman was attacked again and again, you know, unaccountably. And this person is really together in life, you know. Financial accountant for major companies and, you know, musician and, you know, a sportsman, you know, sportswoman, you know, they're not like flaky characters, you know, but they have this element in their life, which is like an intrusive violation of their time, space, and person. And they like come to you and say, well, nobody can cure this. They've been through psychotherapy, psychiatry, overnight dream, sleep apnea analysis. They've been to holy men. They've been, you name it, and it's still going on. And I think, I mean, I'm left with the impression that at some point in their lives, they've connected to this entity. And it is holding them to that contract, actually. Just they can't recall it. That's the problem. Yeah. So the only way to get free of this is to acknowledge that there is something in this ancestral line which has gone wrong somewhere. Mm. And then you need to do some really deep digging too. You know, this is where systems like family constellations can begin to look through sequential episodes in ancestral life to try and find where the trauma occurred. You know, we often talk about trauma-based conditioning. We're all aware of that now.
Yeah, we are, especially today's age.
So, you know, that is going to show up in multiple future lives. It's not done. That's William Faulkner again. You know, it's not done. Past is not even past. It's ever present. So, you know, the thing about incarnation is it's your golden opportunity to set out, identify, cleanse, purify, correct the issues in the ancestral line, clean the passage. That's the golden opportunity that incarnation gives each of us.
That's beautiful.
Which is another way of thinking about it, you know?
Yeah. No, definitely, and that's fascinating for many reasons. Let alone, have you found that ways of healing those things is then more than just going outward into and trying to find people to do it for you, but obviously then going through your own inner esoteric magical work, you know, with not only just journaling and heavy loads of meditation, maybe finding a martial art, because that can help create boundaries for yourself, but then going in and doing your own practices.
Well, there's certainly,
what do you think?
Well, the aspect of whatever repairs the energy bodies.
That's exactly it, right?
You know, so for different people, there's going to be different
works.
Let's say attractive works. Right. It shouldn't be like, you know, a punishment. You know.
Yeah. It should be something that fits in. Nice pieces that fit with your personality.
You don't have to do MMA.
You don't have to be
you don't have to
do so.
Get your ass kicked to sort this out.
True.
You know,
maybe not physically.
And like, you know, like rebirthing breath work for some people is just too intense.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, is that Stanislav Grof's work, or is that something different, the rebirthing breath work?
Yeah, well, where it started was accidentally in California, actually. And the guy brought the technique to Stanislav Grof. As you know, he was at the Saturn Institute. And Stanislav Grof started to experiment with it. But
with the holotropic breath work, right? Is that
really high intensity, and they had like drumming and so on. But the problem with that, I mean, just generally, I'm going to say, the problem with rebirthing breath work is integration. That's the problem with it. You may surface stuff through intense energetic breathing, but it's the integration that matters. And often it brings too much is surfaced too rapidly to enable you to integrate. So after like 6 to 10 sessions later, you suddenly have an aversion to doing it.
Crazy.
Okay, so that means you've like stirred the pot too much.
Yeah.
You know,
and just so everybody knows that the holotropic breath work that Grof was doing, he was doing that because of LSD got outlawed, because their work was in the psychedelic realms. That got outlawed. He had to try to figure out how to do the same kind of psychiatric work with people. So he did the breath work. So
it was interesting because John Mack was then, a psychiatrist, was head of Harvard Medical School. And he went over to the Saturn Institute. And as you know, Grof was a research psychiatrist. So, they got talking, and Grof said to John Mack, he said, you know what? In a certain number of cases of these people doing the holotropic breath work, they're surfacing memories of being abducted by aliens and getting taken to this white room and having these procedures.
Yep.
And he said to John Mack, he says, you want to have a look at this because the statistical occurrence of it is way out. And they're like identical cases. So John Mack he did like a 10, 15-year longitudinal study of this, in which he had a group of subjects who, he examined their entire family lineage. So there was no psychiatric problems, right? But they all had PTSD without having encountered anything that would cause it. That was the one common thing. They had nothing in family background, no trauma in their own biographical timeline, but they had PTSD. So that's when he started really digging into this using regression hypnosis. And again, same story kept coming out again and again. So he documented this as the head of Harvard Medical School.
Crazy.
Harvard went mad.
Of course they did. They're like, this isn't empirical. Where's the empirical science for this?
So they brought together an independent team of scientists to investigate John Mack, which was also unheard of.
Oh, wow. They investigated him.
Yeah. They combed through the study line by line, and at the end of it, they said, actually, it's a model of the application of the scientific method. But it's insane because they're not prepared to accept the conclusion.
Right.
And that still stands. That still stands.
Yes, and that conclusion is that there are different higher level dimensions and lower level dimensions or beings,
absolutely.
and that since it's not It's not something that you can try and truly test empirically through scientific publishing and all that academic nonsense, that they just throw all that stuff out. Even though if you were to collect those through time, you would realize that that seems to be more empirical than what our normal everyday experiences are, because it's only symptoms that we're curing and not getting to the main root of the issue, right?
Yeah. So it does raise a big question about the governance of the planet.
Right. Yeah, it does.
You know, who is in charge, and to what extent are we as a species the result of tampering with the genetic pool of animals that were here.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Millions of years ago. It raises a huge question. It looks like we're constantly at the intersection of certain highways, interdimensional highways.
Yeah.
What we're looking at is a real complex topography of dimensions, certain of which interact with us almost on a daily basis, I would say. But
yeah, that's fascinating.
You know, it's so when we talk about the esoteric, you know, we're talking about this actually. We're not talking about the books. We're not even talking about orders, you know, and organizations. We're not talking about, you know, metaphysical philosophy.
Those are the shells of the actual substance of
the
issue.
Exactly. You know, the esoteric is this profoundly alien dimension of experience. But that's the real thing, actually.
I know.
No, it's not about collecting. You know, I've got a collection of books here.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But I mean, that's not the game.
Yeah, and I think that's fascinating, and you're completely right. Is that the words on the books, right? It's like what it's alluding to, the myth and the metaphor and the actual substance of the magic. It's like the books are like portals, or the practices are portals, or even the systems and orders are portals to the actual substance of what we're trying to get or see, and that's working through your own right, your own layers that you're working. Right,
they can also become a technique for obscuring esoteric reality. You know, you think you've like, even you've done these rituals, it doesn't necessarily mean something has happened, that you yourself have changed. I say without that foundational work on the ancestral field, personal biographical timeline, you know, without that foundation, you're always subject to question mark about results, so-called results of a ritual.
Yeah.
Comes kind of maybe, perhaps, you know, but getting tied up with that stuff is a kind of distraction.
Yeah.
You know, like collecting N copies of the Key of Solomon, for instance. It's a distraction, okay, but you know, it's fine. You know, we all need hobbies.
Right. So then how do you find because in the different worlds of the esoteric, then how do you know as an individual who is actually helping truly bring you through these ancestral, these lineages? Because there's so many charlatans and sophists out there in the world.
Yeah, I don't believe in gurus. I mean, run a mile.
I agree.
You know, you need to do the heavy lifting yourself. All of the healing techniques are freely available pretty well. You know, emotional freedom techniques, you know, for instance, tapping on the major meridian heads.
Yep.
You know, anyone can do that. YouTube is cluttered with free courses. You know, Gary, who he died just a couple of months ago, who developed the technique, has put everything online. You don't have to pay a penny to learn the technique, and yes, one of the most powerful ways of clearing, you know, just day-to-day irritations, if not doing deeper work, you know. And the rebirthing breathwork entirely relies on circular breathing, which is the simplest technique that was ever. Nothing could be simpler, you know. You use your mouth, you open your mouth, you relax, You inhale and exhale after without a break, and you don't push the exhale. That's it. You're done. 3 minutes, and you'll start to feel your energy body moving towards ecstasy.
That's nice.
That's all it takes. 3-4 minutes, and you'll feel that energy body on you. And it's creepy at first. It's strange because it's so unusual to feel your energy body as palpable as your physical body day to day. That's a very unusual experience, and if for no other reason, people should try it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, right. If for no other reason than just to feel something you don't feel every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Reiki. People people forget that the Sui Reiki is a branch of Tendai Buddhism. It's if you get a lineaged initiation, you're connected to a stream of higher order beings by default. The fact that you can't see them or feel them,
yeah, that's not
that's
the
your
point.
problem.
That's your problem, right? Yeah,
Even people can't feel the Reiki energy, but you need to spend 10 days. You need to drink a lot of water, and you need to do it to yourself until your hands are burning. Then, there it is. Okay.
Right.
But I'll tell you another thing about the initiation, just to like contextualize it.
Please.
I got the was it Reiki 2 initiation? Anyway, I went very deep. I tend to respond to the energies very rapidly, and then I found myself in a hall with a black and white checkered floor. Okay. And there was a lectern in front of me, and I turned and I looked to my right, and on the floor next to me was a coffin, and I was lying in it.
Wow.
And then I turned to the other side, and I went in a tunnel, and all of a sudden it went vertical, and I emerged into a pool of light that was so intense. I was aware of many presences, but the intensity of light was too much to be able to perceive correctly what I was seeing, But the sense of overwhelming acceptance and love, of complete embrace, was absolutely, I was kind of in an ecstatic state there. It's very, that's just one initiation, right?
Yeah, that's amazing, and which sounds like the Mason, the Masonic first initiation into
third degree.
the third degree. Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not a Mason, but I know that all that symbol is. So obviously, I fell into an egregore.
You definitely did, right?
Okay.
Yes.
So there must have been a past life continuum there.
Oh,
right. A cell of memory got awakened. But my partner, she was also having the same meditative experience, and she experienced from the lectern a large tongue unrolled itself like a red carpet,
Oh, wow.
And this booming voice was saying, "A well-hung tongue." And for weeks afterwards, she was harassing me with this. Well, what does it mean?
Wow.
I haven't a clue what it means. I mean, I love literature. I never heard that expression in my life. But I stumbled on it. Can you believe this? There's a book called The Sword and the Grail, and it's by one of the descendants, the novelist, descended from the Rosslyn Chapel family. Okay. And I was just reading his book, The Sword and the Grail. Great. It's all about the Templars and the Masons and Rosslyn and everything.
Okay.
And I suddenly come across this little section of, I think, 15th, 16th century Masonic question and answer he had put in the book, obviously because of his own ancestors. And I was just reading through that, and he says, what is the key of the lodge? A well-hung tongue.
No way.
So that kind of gave me a date. Kind of like 300-400 years earlier. Yeah, that was, and it was amazing. She had got that. She has no cultural connection to Masonry, or indeed the esoteric tradition that we know in the West. So
Uh-huh.
it was an extraordinary thing, you know, that our paths crossed on this point.
Yeah, and it really shows how little we know about DNA and how to tap into that, genetics, or that genetic lineage that we have every inside of us. And so when you're doing things like that, that regression happens, and you can pop into these little things that then you experience. And then I like how you called it initiation, because that's your psyche, or you going through a level of initiation that is technically you're just doing at home, but you're doing these techniques and practices that are truly embodied,
So
that are opening it up. Yeah.
the woman I told you about earlier was giving me that Reiki initiation. That's what triggered it.
That's what triggered it. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
So
Nice.
if you can raise your internal energy to a certain level, all of these doors start to fly open.
They do. I agree.
It's very difficult to reach that level. It's even more difficult to sustain it, to be
Yes.
honest. You know,
Oh
we
yeah.
talk about Kundalini. I've accidentally, in my teens, I had Kundalini experiences, which is the full rising of the energy fire serpent up the spine, you know, and it hits your head, and like, you know, cosmic awareness. Everything all of a sudden is in its perfect place. That is the most extraordinary experience. It stays with you for days after. So, like, you know, and then you start to plummet back down into materiality,
Yeah.
and small irritants,
Yeah. Right.
serpents, you know, and
Exactly.
all, oh, I'm back. You know, like you just went round the moon or something, and now you're back.
No, that's hilarious, and it's true. It's Carl Jung wrote that book, right, Kundalini Yoga, and he talks about how with our own Kundalini experiences, like with you can use like psychedelics, things like that. But the reason you want to find an embodied practice is because instead of psychedelics, which basically raises you up really fast and
Yeah,
then comes down,
yeah,
it'll flatten you. You'll fall.
yeah,
And so the idea is to continually raising yourself so you can kind of try to stay
yeah. But again,
in those.
that's a kind of mechanistic approach, I feel, you know, because
Okay.
the reason I say that is that the higher order beings are perfectly capable of inducing that experience for you.
Oh, I
You know,
like that.
with like a flick of their fingers.
Yeah, right.
So the real question again is what's going on, is what your persona is telling you is reality, and what your path is. Is that what your path actually is? Okay, you may have deviated, even though you feel that you're on the path. You may have deviated. How would you know that? Well, there's something unsatisfying about it. So even if we dedicate ourselves to a particular system or set of techniques, practices, we also have to be able to say, well, maybe I got what I could get out of that for this lifetime, and maybe I need to broaden my horizon, you know, not to get so locked in, you know, as to
That's true.
that's just a general comment, you know.
No, I like that because myopia can happen
Yeah, that's what I'm
with
saying.
anything.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And, you know, once you get in an organization in which there's other people and there's different levels, it becomes a social beehive, you know, of it, kind of self-sustaining,
Yes.
you know, it doesn't necessarily mean you're still evolving, even though you have even more grandiose titles
Yeah, that's
to
true.
your
And it's kind of
credit.
like what, yeah, exactly. No, it's so true. And I believe that 100%, especially because like when if people out there, they should read like Stavish's Egregore book. And he
Yeah,
talks about that, how
yeah,
when you're in these orders or things like that, you don't know it, but you're sustaining an egregore. And it's just like anything else. It wants you to continue to give it energy.
absolutely. So again, you know, that is something that exists beyond the horizon of the persona.
Right.
But
That's a
um,
great point.
you know, not recognizing that it's there and that it has these powers. Let's face it, you know, trying to free yourself from an egregore is quite a big step.
Quite a big step. No,
You know,
yeah, I do know. I agree with that. So
you
then
know.
So what do you, so how, I think there's a path that then leads us into your book that you're not only have written, but the new one you're working on, the Rituals and Epiphanies of Mithraism, right? And so
Yeah.
it's a fascinating thing where, so how do we connect that thread to those things? Because it seems like the cult of Mithras, let alone the cult of Saturn, are deeply integrated into our own everyday life. How do you see that?
Yeah. I think there's a couple of points we need to make because we have a lot of confusion these days.
Yes.
First of all, the Hellenistic roots of Mithraism is the Hellenistic esoteric tradition, which is Orphism. That's what it is,
Yes. Yes.
you know. And people don't recognize it, but Mithraism is a form of Orphism for a largely male audience. It emerged from Anatolia, from the Hellenistic domain, and was exported to Rome. And why was it so important for Rome? And simply because they were making a political agreement with a Hellenistic kingdom. Okay, it was to settle the problem between Rome and Parthia, and the state that lay in between was called Armenia. So the Parthians said, well, the son of the Parthian king will be the king there, but we'll allow him to get recognized, inaugurated, so to speak, in Rome. So he became the king of the intermediary kingdom.
Wow.
To establish the peace between the two parties, right? And so as part of that, they took the rights of Mithras to Nero's court in Rome. And Mithras, of course, is the great god of settlements, agreements, contracts. Okay, so it was a way of uniting the Parthian and Roman elite on a spiritual level.
Wow.
Because they would share the deity, not just the ritual process. It's initiation to a deity. It's deity yoga.
Yep.
Which is, a universal practice, although we think of it as like Indo-Tibetan. But what the Indo-Tibetan Vajrayana is doing today used to be common, and we used to call it the mysteries.
Okay, that's a great point.
That's all it was. It was deity yoga. You get the initiation, you experience the influx of the deity itself, and thereafter it changes your consciousness going forward. Because you suddenly relativize the persona and you grasp that you have this spiritual continuity from life to life. And that assuages the fear of death and dying. Because it's just a transition now.
Yes.
That changes everything, actually.
Changes everything.
When you have that realization.
It does.
Not just the intellectual realization, but and that's the blessing that the higher initiations can give you. So it's still available within the Indo-Tibetan tradition in a very powerful form, but it was just what we used to have access to throughout the West in the mystery cults. So the cult of Mithras was a form of Orphic mystery cult, which is why he's depicted stabbing the bull, actually, because the bull getting stabbed is the way Dionysus dies, stabbed by, They come for him as a child, and just as they're going to kill him, he transmutes through a number of forms, and the final form he's in is a bull.
Wow.
And that's when he gets killed. So it becomes a metaphor also for killing the lower instincts.
Yep. Lower desires, animal passions.
Yeah. And so it was, and I'll tell you where the first occurrence of this imagery happens. I found it's in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Of course it is. It all goes back to there, it feels.
2000 BCE. There's a precise description of the killing of the Bull of Heaven, they call it. Gilgamesh stabs the Bull of Heaven while he's kneeling on its back, holding its nostrils and stabbing it. And Enkidu is like grabbing its tail. But that's the image. And if it was written down in 2000 BCE, that means it must have been in the oral tradition.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're talking pre-Bronze Age. We're talking the Neolithic. And the god Mithra is known in like Sanskrit. He's known in ancient Persian. He's known in Anatolian Hittite and Mitanni. They all have a Mithra. That means the god is pre-Indo-European.
Wow.
He must have been a part of the Proto-Indo-European language before all the families of languages broke away.
Right.
So we're talking prior to 8,000 BCE.
Wow.
Prior to 8,000 BCE. That's probably the point at which you start seeing a separation of the distinct dialects that became the European language tree. 7,000 BCE, yeah, so 10,000 years ago. And the god was already established then. He was known as the god of contracts and agreements and so on and so forth. So
That's
anyway,
crazy, Peter. That's crazy.
That's the backstory.
That's an amazing backstory. And the reason I say that's crazy is because of most people, the normal everyday person doesn't even understand, what the Sumerian Mesopotamian myths are with Enki and Enlil.
Yeah.
And then most people think that, there wasn't really anything before Mesopotamia and their mythologies. And what you're stating right now is that not only is there pre-mythology, but there's a through line from the 8,000 BCE all the way through up until the Hellenization of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And
that starts with an oral tradition and moves itself forward.
Yeah. And I'll tell you where it probably started is south of the Caucasus Mountains and north of eastern Anatolia. So within 100 kilometers, perhaps, of Göbekli Tepe.
Yep.
Which is 10,000 years ago, right?
Younger Dryas period happens and all this stuff, and all of a sudden you get Mesopotamia. And what you're telling me is during that Younger Dryas period that there were these myths being still pushed forward by Neolithic tribes?
And we can actually see in one of I think it's Karahan Tepe, they've uncovered a bull and a person standing in front of it who looks like he's about to jump over it,
No way.
So like this thing with the, it's like if you look at the Mediterranean today, like from Portugal to Italy, they have these bull festivals when they loose these bulls into the town, and there's bullfighting, and then there's bull baiting, and then there's some places they jump over the bulls. The bulls run at them full speed, and at the right timing, they spring up and let the bull pass under them.
Wow.
Okay, so that's what seems to have been depicted in Karahan Tepe. And this is like 8,000 BC. This is 10,000 years ago.
That's so crazy.
So slowly, as we're uncovering what today is called Tash Tepe-la, the stone hill civilization, because there's like 40 sites down there now. We talk about Göbekli Tepe, but it's surrounded by at least 40 other sites. It's a civilization, in other words. Okay.
Wow.
And we need to take account of this because it's the earliest, and it's got monumental architecture, like year zero.
Yeah, like year zero. Yeah, exactly.
So it looks like it's almost like the people had the skills and knowledge to do this, but we've lost what happened before. Where did they acquire the skills and knowledge to erect these massive, T-shaped pillars? And they're huge, like hundreds of tons,
Yeah.
And we don't even have agriculture at this point.
All right.
We don't even have ceramics yet. There's no metal, There's plates there, but they're hewn out of stone.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is crazy stuff, And there's no domestication of animals yet. So we're at that stage where there's like an incipient civilization which knows how to do the architecture, but it doesn't have any of the supports necessary to make sense of that.
Right.
So there's
And
a real,
until the early Mesopotamian period, right?
well, Mesopotamian, you're talking about 3000 BCE, really, which is the
So
Bronze Age.
yeah. So there's like thousands of years of
Yeah.
this oral tradition that's happening
Yeah.
where they can't do anything else, and yet there's these high level architectural wonders.
Yeah.
And
Stone
then
carvings.
and then that's the whole idea of what like Graham Hancock or like the interview I just dropped with Dr. Heather Lynn that she talks about is like, what is this messages from the magicians of old, right? These maybe high level priest class that saw cyclical cycles of nature happening, and they had to then put our own mythopoetic history through an oral tradition. Am I adding too much to this, or is there?
No, I think all of that is included, but we still can't explain why, as a species, we are favored to be manipulating the environment in these complicated, symbolically attuned ways. You know, we don't have an explanation for it.
No, we don't. And then we make up explanations, basically.
Yeah. So anyway, what started this whole train off was what I wanted to say is Mithraism emerged out of Hellenism, and Hellenism wasn't dualistic.
No, it was through the Orphic tradition, right?
And the big problem with the West is Christianity and moral dualism, which is an infection, because we believe in absolute moral evil.
Right.
And therefore, the Anunnaki are now read as like a synonym for Satan or the devil.
Right. Thank you. Good. That's a great point. Yes.
Okay.
Nice. Okay.
Yep. And then that nightmare is fed back into us as another night terror. Maybe there's the evil demiurge.
Right.
You know, and once you get on that like hamster running roller, you know, it goes and goes, you know, but it's a profoundly polluting idea because, as you know, as a philosopher, you cannot have a absolute metaphysical evil. It is nonsensical idea from the get-go. You know, it just doesn't, but, you know, people are treading that windmill, you know.
Oh, yeah, and making tons of money doing so.
So there's a lot of fear and scare and moral judgment, but essentially it's a Gnostic dualism that is at the root of it. And once you're infected with that Gnostic dualism, you can't see anything straight.
Yeah,
it is a terrible set of lenses to perceive reality through. Terrible set of distortion. So
no, I agree. And so then can you help us understand this whole push in the in our social zeitgeist about how Saturn becomes the great big bad guy then? Like a lot of people want to push that Saturn is being is being worshipped by all these cults of the black cube and things, when really it doesn't seem like that's what's happening through your work.
Okay, two things here. There is absolutely a cult of Saturn.
Yes.
And I uncovered its earliest manifestation in my book, The Game of Saturn.
Right.
Okay. And when I decode, this is a 15th century tarot deck. And I stumbled upon it in 2012, I think, because the original cards had just been purchased by the Brera Gallery in Milan. They paid like 800,000 euros. For the previous 500 years, these cards have been in private hands. Mm-hmm. They had surfaced like twice, to my knowledge. Once was a collection of photographs of the cards were put on display in the British Museum, and Pamela Coleman Smith saw them there and used some of the imagery to put into the Smith-Waite standard tarot deck. Okay. But apart from that, the cards are being virtually invisible. They were known to some curators, some specialist collectors, But after the purchase, the Burr Gallery put them on display. They put an exhibition catalog out. And I spent probably 20 years with tarot. I was, oh, what's this? I was so curious. And I couldn't understand the damn thing I was looking at. And that really got the hook in me.
Of course it did.
Because one reason, they were the finest execution you can ever imagine. This was a Renaissance master engraver made these images. All 78 cards were pictorial, unique, figurative imagery. That's really exceptional.
That's super exceptional.
And they'd been printed, and one or two cards did have like a tower card and like the Fool card, kind of look like modern tarot cards, okay, or the Tarot de Marseille, let's say, which is
right
18th century. The rest of them made no sense whatsoever, and I couldn't let go of it. I knew this amount of expense, this amount of talent expended on creating this unique deck of cards had to have a meaning. And there was such disturbing scenes on it. A child getting burned, decapitated heads, people getting boiled and burned on a fire, And I thought, there's no way this is a wedding gift.
Right.
There's just no way, And also,
Definitely.
like on the surface, they had all these Roman figures taken from Roman history, Livy or Plutarch's Parallel Lives. And when I looked at the narrative, the card had the name of the person, but from the Roman period, some of these families ruled in Rome for like 3 or 4 centuries. So, there were like 10 generations who have similar names. Or the family name went on for like 3 centuries, So I was looking at them, and the action on the card didn't match the name and the known historical biography. So I said, okay, this is a game. Somebody is playing a game here. I've got to figure out what it is. And finally, it took me 3 years working day and night. I cracked the code. And essentially, the game of Saturn is the process of breaking the code of this 15th century grimoire, is what it turned out to be. But not one of the Christian grimoires. Because, in the Renaissance, you have like stratified layers of magic. And like at the bottom, you'd have like the hedge witch stuff.
Yep.
Then you have like an entire class of clerics, monks, theology students who did grimoire magic. Okay, and it was all Key of Solomon and all these kind of spells, and they were for hire, basically. So the merchants and the elite would hire them to do their magical work, and then above them, at the level of a court, you had astral magicians and astral magic, which is highly, it's another level of education, right? But above that, there was a level, which is what I uncovered in the game of Saturn, of Hellenistic theurgy. Some invoking the deity, the Hellenistic deity. And that's what I stumbled on, encoded within the game of Saturn. So it was an elite ritual process to invoke the god Baal-Hamon, who is Kronos, who is Saturn, into the ruler, so that they would be empowered to go out into the world and deal with the problems the Renaissance prince had to deal with.
Wow.
Which was basically 6 months of every year in the saddle, leading an army. To earn the income. That's, that was standard for these Renaissance princes. So
King warrior. He was a warrior.
Absolutely. And the Este of Ferrari, they grew up with this. By the time they're like 10, they had to be able to wield a sword. They had to fight. They had to joist, with 2 horses and all of that was, and they had to learn how to organize the logistics, the supply chain lead an army, and dispose it on the field of battle to get the results. Otherwise, they wouldn't earn anything. Okay, because that was their actual primary source of income. Amazing. So anyway, that's what I stumbled on, and the reason why, how it got there. There's two questions: why Saturn, and how did it get to Italy? It was brought to Italy by the advisor to the last of the emperors, the Byzantine emperors. His name was George Gemistos, and he was a Hellenist through and through and through, despised Christianity, and he believed that the only way to survive as a culture would be to revert to the pagan gods. And when he went to Italy, you know, with the emperor, they were trying to get support before Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Turks, trying to muster support. He went with the emperor and a large entourage, and he started to lecture there. And he had developed a complete liturgy for the pagan gods, how to invoke them. He taught this system, and that's the way it got from Byzantium to the Renaissance court. It was brought there.
Wow.
Okay, so why Saturn, or why Kronos, or Baal Hamon, even stranger? Because Alexander the Great believed himself to be the son of Amun. Okay, so Alexander the Great went to Luxor and got initiated to the cult of Amun in the temple of Amun, or in Luxor temple, then went to the Siwa oasis where the great, oracle of Amun was in the desert, and he was recognized there by the priesthood. Then he went and conquered the rest of the known world, all the way to India. So if you're going to invoke any deity as a warrior prince, you want the same deity that Alexander the Great. That's the one to go for. That's it. That's it. So you know, the story was kept alive in the Alexander Romance literature, which are tales around Alexander. Most of them are fantastic tales. And they were told in like Damascus and Alexandria and Constantinople by professional storytellers. And the tale of his conception by the god Amun with his mother is one of the first tales of that Alexander Romance literature. So it was common, it was well-known literature until like 17th century at least. So if anyone checks out the Alexander Romance literature, they'll see the first tale is how Alexander's mother was conceived Alexander with the god Amun in the form of a dragon.
Of course. Of course it was. Of course it was a form of a dragon. That's exactly how it works out, which is then why, that's fascinating. And then so
the cards just depict the process of how to invoke the draconian current into the ruler.
Into the ruler itself. So he could go out into the world and do the philosopher, warrior, king thing. And make sure that his kingdom was alive and healthy so they could bring in finances and money and food and everything. And the cards themselves were just basically like a grimoire, or it was their magical way of initiating the prince in both the physical and the internal aspects of that god.
Well, I tell you, as I worked with those cards for 3 years, day and night, huge energies came down on me.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was so intense I couldn't get up out of bed, you know. It's like my body was rigid for like 3 days. It was the energy was too much to be borne. But like on several occasions, it just like. But the cards are there, the book is there, you know. So that is a form of Saturnian current, which is non-dualistic. It's not evil. I mean, it's power. That's what it is. It's not dark. It's power, you know, and power does freak some people out, you know, but it doesn't mean it's evil, right?
It doesn't, right? And so that's that Nietzschean master-slave dichotomy where the priest class have basically made people feel like power and the warrior class are evil, and that being meek and weak is a virtue, which it's not.
Yeah.
Is that, am I kind of hitting the nail on the head there?
Kind of. And also they've inculcated this absolute moral
This
evil.
absolute moral dualism of evil
Yeah,
being something, and that evil is Saturn, which it's
yeah,
not.
yeah. It's not, and it hangs over you unless you obey the church.
Exactly.
Okay, like
Yeah.
they're the only people who can open the gate. So when Gemistos came from Byzantium, he said, you know, you realize that soul's eternal. It doesn't come into existence like the church is telling you at the point of conception. You were always here. You always will be here, and you pass through many lives. And that was like,
Yes.
wow,
Yeah. Boom.
that
Yeah.
exploded in the Renaissance. And it triggered the second Renaissance, the Greek or Hellenistic Renaissance that we associate with the work of Botticelli,
Botticelli. Yep.
the pagan
Ficino.
imagery,
Right.
yeah,
Yep.
Marsilio Ficino.
Ficino. Yep.
So that was like a hand grenade thrown into the
Yeah.
into the church at that time. That's how it happened. So when we look at the cult of Mithras, right, you need to look at the other statuary. It's not just the bull killing scene. And the other statuary shows Mithras emerging from the cosmic egg, exactly like Phanes from the cosmic Orphic egg.
Right.
And he
And
emerges,
that's
yeah, he doesn't emerge into nothingness. He emerges into the presence of Kronos, who's asleep. Why? Because Kronos lives in the golden age, a time of absolute perfection and harmony. And what they're saying is when you raise the energy sufficiently, you will emerge into that golden age temporarily. You'll
oh,
experience, because it's a state of non-dual awareness that is at the peak energy, let's call it.
right.
Throws your awareness into a state of non-dual awareness. Even though you can't sustain it, you experience it and it changes everything going
It
forward.
does. Yes. And can you relate that then to that sounds like the Philosopher's Stone, the Holy Grail, the alchemical marriage, like are these kind of motifs for that experience, would you say? Or
Yeah,
am I
definitely. But the problem is once you externalize these symbols,
it
they
becomes
become
functional again.
they become like
That's true. That's true.
the pieces on a checkerboard, you know, and you're back to this library of books instead
And
of
dualism
yeah,
and
instead of the
everything.
experience which you should be
Yes.
heading towards.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's that, sorry to bore you, but it gets back to healing the energy body and the ancestral timeline and the
That's not boring at
biographical.
all.
That's the donkey work, but that's the platform for real spiritual esoteric. That's where the esoteric starts.
Yeah.
It's the
I
actual
agree.
experience, yeah?
Yeah, it's like the beginning of all great work is just make sure you heal yourself. And the only way you can ever experience anything on the higher levels, and that is the alchemical process of burning away the leaden mundane. And so you can keep the higher levels of the gold. And that's that
Yeah,
golden Saturnian
yeah,
experience then.
yeah. So Mithraism or the cards of the Sola-Busca, if you like, or alchemical are all metaphors. They're not the thing itself. They're a
Exactly.
metaphor, you know, to
Exactly.
allow a certain train of thinking and visualization. But the danger is their facilitation can become a kind of intellectual trap.
Yeah.
You start elaborating and elaborating around the alchemical imagery, you know, and it's like 300 years of this obscure nonsense, you
Yeah.
know, and, you know, what's the green dragon and what happens
What
when it
does it
becomes
mean?
a red dragon? And,
Yeah. Right.
you
Right. And
know,
you're all like, it's the whole Bruce Lee thing, right? Don't focus on the finger or you'll miss the heavenly splendor, right? Yeah, no, but that's very true. And I find that really fascinating. So can you relate that then to the inversion of what's going on in our modern zeitgeist of people trying to then demonize the Saturnian figure as well as try to relate it to all of the Abrahamic traditions? Because it seems like the conspiratorial religious slash dum-dum is continually wanting to like find all these different imageries of Saturn's black cube and being all like, oh, that's what these the parasitic class is worshiping the Saturnian thing. Like there seems to be an inversion here where really it's not that at all.
Like if there's like a traffic accident, everybody in the other lanes will slow down to look at it. It's like compulsive, And this is a bit like what's going on with the Anunnaki and the devil worship and everything, It's like, you're drawn to it, It has the power of that magnetism. And the more you dwell on it, the less your inner love of life kind of gets dimmed by it. Like if you really concentrate on this whole Epstein thing, what they were doing, what they may have been doing, all these suggestions of like cannibalism, ritualized abuse. I mean, it was all in Eyes Wide Shut, actually.
It was.
Kubrick dropped the whole story over there. But the more you dwell on it, it kind of, it's like these real crime series as well.
Yeah.
There's a darkness there.
There is.
Which you kind of get attuned to, and you want that. That flood of what is it? Some kind of inner chemistry that's highly addictive. But it doesn't leave you in a good place. Leaves you in a very suspicious, depressed kind of. In other words, it's harming your energy body. And I'm not saying you ignore this stuff, but you need to understand that it also becomes a part of this game,
Definitely.
Like eating and drinking stuff that is really bad for you, but you still do it. It becomes a compulsion. And this is like the illness that we all suffer from, is these addictions, uncontrolled addictions to whatever it is, which are like our negativities writ large, externalized, maybe is a better word for it.
Definitely.
So it all points to the need for certain inner work, the opposite. That's the reason. I'm not condemning those things. I'm saying we're all like swilling around in the same sea, I'm not floating above it with my wings. We're all in the same boat. But the attraction of the dark side tells us something about something we need to fix in ourselves.
Yeah.
Let me give you.
I love that. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Another example, running an energy healing center for a long time, people release a lot of negative things into the atmosphere. Literally, bits of people who've passed, energetic attachments related to extremely negative events or traumas. When you cleanse the energy body, there's a certain discharge from it. Of these things, and you need to clean the atmosphere, with smudging or whatever you're going to use. And on one occasion, we were introduced to actually Islamic kind of magician, except he was working with angelic magic. He said, "Okay, so it's fine." So he said, "Look, I can help you clean the place." So yeah, great. Let's see. And my partner and I were like standing in the office one day, actually we were at the admin table looking through all the invoices and this and that. And I saw quite distinctly like a white sheet coming across my visual field and like pass between us. And as it did, my knees just gave out. In fact, both our knees gave out. And it was like getting brushed by the wing of an angel. I don't know how to explain it to you. It was that intense. And really purified the atmosphere. So that as well was important for me to see and to understand that these forces that we think of are so remote or non-existent, because we're like plunged into this materiality are another part of the dimension intersecting with us. Okay, and it's important to know that, and that when you raise your inner energy, you can get on their, like, their vibration. Let's say you can reach up to them, and they are ready to reach back. That's the curious thing. They're not hiding. It's just down to us to make that, to lift ourselves out of the mud, basically. Let's put it in words. Lift yourself out, get out of the mud, and actually experience that,
Yeah.
So, it very much reminded me of some words in real case Duino elegies. He said, "Who have I cried out amongst the ranks of the angels would hear me? And even if one of that number embraced me, I would wither in the face of their more intense existence." Which is a beautiful way of saying this, And that sensibility that the vibrational levels of some of these beings is so high that you only need to get brushed, like, by the wing to feel all of a sudden, there's such a range of possibilities open for us at the higher dimensional end of our continuity between lives and through lives. It's like we brush with them all the time unknowingly. So that for me is a big, like, hint, about what are we seeing day to day? What are we doing day to day? And are we in alignment with the evolutionary forces in the universe or not? Or are we just passengers? Okay, so the minute you step out of being passenger to co-worker, you're in a different game. All of a sudden, your company is radically expanded in the higher octaves. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah, you are actually in the game of Saturn then, it seems.
Yeah, but the higher octave of that Saturn. Saturn is, the planetary Saturn is a disciplinary energy, let's face it. But Chronos Saturn is a hyper-celestial entity or being. Okay, it's just the Romans conflated Chronos to Saturn, and then Saturn to the planetary deity. Okay, but these are like different octaves apart.
Yep.
So the Chronos is the golden age figure, which approximates to our state of non-dual awareness. The planetary Saturn is a disciplinary force, which is very effectual on the planet. When when the planet is like now, we feel it.
Like we're in it right now. We feel it every day.
Do feel it. So, and these troubles we're seeing in the last 3 days are all forecast by the astrologers for precisely these dates. It's like we're just in a big game. Doesn't matter what these rulers were planning or not planning.
Right.
There were certain energies at work that would bring about certain outcomes. So we still need to figure out our own response to them on an individual basis.
Yeah,
it's the same muddy challenge to us. And therefore, do you want to stop being passenger and subject to this, or you want to become, co-architect of a higher shift, let's call it a shift in human awareness, which is the work. That's the higher dimensional work. And as I say, the company is correspondingly higher octave.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's a big challenge. Beautiful. It's a big challenge.
It's a big challenge. Yeah, some say the ultimate challenge.
Yeah. Well, as long as we're in incarnation, it is.
Right. Yeah, that's a good.
But on like the broader scale, it's not a big challenge. It just means we need to be more mindful what we're doing, how are we spending our time, what are we putting into ourselves, and what service basically do we provide? How are we lifting other people? And in, what are we doing to help others? That's it. It's so simple, actually. And
Yeah.
actually, whether you work in a soup kitchen or you're trying to evoke states of consciousness which are more elevated, doesn't matter. You'll do the work which is appropriate to this present incarnation, and that's enough. Nothing more is expected of you.
Yeah, no, I love that, and that makes it more palatable. Really, that it's not something that is looming over you, but you have the ability just to take it step by step every day and do those things.
Yeah, and one of the things is normally you're on the right path because it's fun.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That that playfulness.
When it becomes like oh God, no, that means you're off the path.
Yes.
As long as you're on the path, it's
Yeah, it
good.
doesn't have to be a slog.
Yeah, I mean, it can be tiring, can be all
Of course.
kinds of things, but in essence, you wouldn't want to be doing anything else. So it's the joy
No,
of
that's
it's the joy of it, So
no, I love that.
it's not a punitive path at all. It's not like Christianity or something.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And so before we were talking, you're writing a new book right now that's going to be, as you were talking, part 2 of your
Yeah.
Rituals and Epiphanies of Mithraism?
Yeah,
Of
because
Mithras?
I think what I did with the ritual and epiphany is dissect this process of how the ritual process of initiation brought the initiate to states of non-dual awareness. Okay, and to do that, I have to explain where it came from briefly. But that explanation needs to be opened out now. And the way I'm doing that, I'm looking at some of the sacred sites of the Hellenistic and earlier Bronze Age period, and looking at how sacred landscape was used as a mechanism of enlightenment, so to speak. Okay, and this means total arrangement of a landscape so that the rituals enacted within it would be aligned with the planetary and stellar bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And they were perceived as the manifest deities, in other words, the face of the divine. So that beyond the planets and the stars were the energies themselves in their purest form. So this is like a technique, technique or know-how, from which the cult of Mithras emerged. And people who discuss Mithraism often talk about the star talk, how the bull killing scene is like an astronomical or astrological scene. Well, I'm going to show how that emerges and the energies, and we're going to use some star photography and superimpose the Mithraic image on it, so you can see how it used to relate to the visible night skies.
Wow,
So
that's amazing.
they're actually channeling energies. It's not, once it got transferred to Rome, it became this underground cult.
Yes.
Okay, so it was in Mithraea, which they often painted like the roof of the Mithraea with stars. But that's like a dislocated version. The original Hellenistic version would have actual stars.
Yeah, of course, right.
Yeah, and given that we've now traced this bull killing all the way back to the Bronze Age, Epic of Gilgamesh and beyond,
And
course,
beyond.
it was a stellar cult.
Of course it was.
So we're going to recover that, and people will be able to
Wow.
see for themselves the kind of roots of this, because this was Europe's greatest mystery cult ever for 300 years. From Scotland to the deserts of Syria, from the banks of the Rhine and Danube to North Africa, thousands of Mithraea. It's simply one of the greatest mystery cults ever. And it's a worthwhile thing to know the roots, to know the mechanism, what they were doing, because it was an entire spiritual tradition, entirely parallel to like the Vajrayana of the Indo-Tibetan tradition. So that's why I'm recovering it in these 2 volumes. All the other books written about it to date are like 30 years old.
Okay.
The standard books on, David Delancey,
Right.
Beck, all these people, when you check when the book was written, it's at least 30 years ago, if not 40 years ago.
Wow.
And aside from that, Mithraism has become like a small speciality within Roman social history. Okay, so it deals with all the class issues and organization. But I'm focused on the ritual process itself and what that process was designed to create for the initiate. And it had to be something really important because these guys were on the front lines on the Rhine and Danube or on Parthia,
Right. Yeah.
Life was not a given day to
Yeah,
day,
right.
And
Yeah, right,
if you've seen Gladiator,
yeah, exactly.
that opening scene should tell you everything, how
That's
rough
true.
it would be on the frontiers. So this cult had to deliver something that was so meaningful that it would make that kind of harsh life bearable. And what it delivered was that introduction to states of non-dual awareness. And say once you grasp that this is just an interlude, this life is just an interlude on a much larger, once you get that perspective, changes everything about the way you go about day to day.
It does.
So,
No, it actually does.
this is like a recovery archaeology I'm doing, but it's
You
the
are.
archaeology of the spirit, let's say, or of the soul.
No, that's amazing. This seems to be to me, as you speak about it, it seems to be monumental work. Like this is so important for the history of our species.
Yeah, well, at least for the esoteric tradition in the West, I think it's foundational.
Foundational.
Because even the early Masonry refers back to the cult of Mithras,
Yeah.
7 steps and so on. It was important to the founders of Masonry that they had this in the background, even though it was not clear. I mean, most of the archaeology was not done till 20th century, basically. All we had is some statuary that had been recovered during the 18th century, let's say. But the archaeology didn't get going really until, you talk about as late as 1950, when, the first Martin Verma did the first full studies of Mithraea, frescoes, everything that was found inside, That's when it got a hard-edged kind of understanding of what Mithraism meant materially. But the spiritual side, nobody really wants to touch that from academia.
Yeah, no, they don't.
That is, that's like the third rail of academia. There's your career going down down the drain if you start. So,
which is wild because academia would be so much more full and blooming if they could add in that the meaning and substance of the spirit. It's especially because it stems from Plato, and if it's my understanding, Plato was an initiate himself of the Orphic traditions.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was. I mean, he couldn't have written Phaedrus without
exactly.
Even though he's couching everything in metaphoric language, that ascent, that the chariots, and seeing beyond the formlessness, the ecstatic formlessness. Actually, it's just a description of non-dual awareness.
Yeah. Because almost he's like metaphorically talking about the sun behind the sun, right?
Absolutely.
So there's the good and the sun behind the sun, which is then maybe Saturn.
Yeah.
Right.
So the problem with Western philosophy is reading Plato as though he was an analytic philosopher.
Right, I know it.
He was a poet.
He's a poet. It makes me want to slam my head through a wall every time I talk to somebody who's more of an analytic philosopher like that.
And I can say that as an analytic philosopher.
You're right.
I got the marks and I got the scars on my back to prove it.
You flogged yourself with Wittgenstein the whole time.
I did 3 years of formal logic.
Did you?
I did.
Did you? Nice.
Flagellation.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's so funny. Nice. Well, you know, it led you to the promised land, which is the substantialness of the Western esoteric tradition, and you speak so elegantly and beautifully, and your books are so well written. So when do you think this new book is going to be finished?
Well, it's 50% done, and
Nice.
the next 2 months I'm going to wind it off. Possible for June, but maybe autumn.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's,
the
that's
publisher
fantastic.
is eager to have it.
Of course he is. It's like, let's get out part 2 here. We got double book series.
It's got a lot of astral photography in it with the.
That's so cool.
So you can actually see what they were looking at. The 7 steps, the alignment of 7 planets in the sky. Yeah, which is one is coming up, or has just passed 28, just passed alignment of all the planets in line. So that this visual aspect is very much missing in the literature. But anyway, that's going to be in there. We're going to really look at sacred landscape and why the alignment of the stars, planets, and landscape and ritual is such another dimension to work with. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing, Peter. Peter, thank you so much again. Like I'm obviously, as long as you'll have me, I will have you back on to continue the exploration, Peter, because I think you are such a wealth of knowledge, and I really feel like I just want to continue tapping into that beautiful brain soul of yours.
Okay.
Yeah, you've got so much to talk about, and I just love every second of it. I'd like to kind of wind down here. Please just give the audience all of your things. Like, where can we find you? Where's the best place to buy your books? Yeah, let us know.
So I've got like 3 publishers. One is Inner Traditions, and the most interesting healing experiences we encountered over the 20 years or so are in the power of the healing field. Okay. And I really recommend that, because you can see the techniques being used and the results we got, and just how past lives are fully integrated in healing day-to-day issues for people. So I really recommend that to anyone. Then there's Scarlet Imprint, who published most of my books. You had the guys on the other day.
Yep, they're brilliant.
And then the Mithras work is with Theon, Munich-based publisher.
Okay.
So, that's it really. Some of the stuff is available through Amazon. All of it is available from the publishers. And I do have a website, but it's more like a static brochure. And I spend a lot of time writing, so I'm not as active on social media as I should be for the modern age. But I get the books written. There they are.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Well, that's amazing. Well, you can leave it up to people like us to make sure everyone knows where to find you. And
okay, great.
So you stay away from social media, because it sometimes is a little terrible.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on. Really enjoyed the conversation. It's been good fun.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Yeah, Peter, it's been amazing. I've had an amazing time. And make sure everyone, yes, please, everyone go over to, even if Peter Mark Adams' website's just a brochure, go check out his brochure. Go to all his publishers, buy his books.
Instagram.
Yep, nice. Go check out his Instagram. He definitely is active on Instagram. Go check him, join him there. Comment on all his things. It's more pivotal and important now more than ever that people truly try to understand exactly where we're coming from, how deep and how integrated our spiritual aspects of our lives, these higher dimensions, these lower dimensions, are integrated into everything we do, whether you like it or not. And that is why we're here, to make sure that you go and check out all these things. And so our history is grander than we can ever imagine. Our spirituality has more substance than we can ever even fathom, but there are ways to tap into those things. And so make sure, if you like these kind of things, like, subscribe, and share. Magus and the Media is here here to break down all of these things for you, to bring in these beautiful authors and philosophical minds like somebody like Peter Mark Adams, as well as Scarlet Imprints and the like. We're doing this for you. We're doing this for me, and we're doing this for the world. We can heal our lineage one layer at a time. Thank you for such a fantastic day, Peter. And I hope everyone out there in the world has a beautiful day as well. Thank you and good night.